Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be solving the Hanayama Star puzzle, which is a level 3 out of a possible 6 on the Hanayama difficulty scale. And to be honest, looking at the box, this one looks like it shouldn't be very difficult at all. There is one sort of shell piece that's containing the actual star piece, and it doesn't look like it should be held in there very strongly, if that makes sense. But we will find out shortly whether that is true or not. And as always, we are going to be attempting to disassemble the star puzzle, then we're going to attempt to reassemble it, and then once we've done that, we will then place it on our leaderboard based on how difficult the star puzzle is to solve. At the minute, we've got the loop puzzle just out of shot down here is the easiest puzzle, and then we go left to right, bottom to top, getting more difficult, or progressively getting more difficult as we go up, until we hit the hourglass puzzle at the very top, which is the hardest puzzle that we've done so far. That's enough chit chat, let's get straight into attempting to solve the star puzzle. Okay, so here is the star puzzle. The first thing is that this is a heavy, chunky puzzle. This is, well, massive and also heavier than it looks as well. It's also got this cool sort of snake head on it, which I think just adds to the the image of it. I don't think it does anything specifically. So, as is fairly obvious, we need to separate this star from this big shell piece here, which is probably going to be more difficult than I anticipated. But before we actually get into figuring it out, we're going to have a read of the box. So it says, at the end of the 19th century, Britain experienced a huge puzzle craze. Despite their rarity, I managed to pick up a number of the puzzles from that period in flea markets. Based on these original, who's actually writing this? I managed to pick up at the end of the 19th century. Who's writing this? Anyway, based on these original puzzles from Britain's famous puzzle period, this is one that we have successfully revived in its new form. The key part of this puzzle is the star, which needs to be freed from the snake binding it. If only the star weren't so stubborn in its return to the snake. Supervised by Nobuya Shigehara. So, it's an old puzzle, is what we've just discovered. No clues or hints or anything, but I mean it's fairly straightforward in what we have to do, I think. Separate this from this, or find the one position where it separates. Whether the start position is a specific position or not, I'm not 100% certain. I would imagine not. I would imagine it just needs to be back together. So, well, it's too late now anyway, but we didn't make note of where the actual original position was. This is probably going to be one of those solutions where I just stumble into it and we're just fiddling around with this and spinning it around, and all of a sudden it'll fall apart. Now, I've assumed that we are, there's no real difference between left and right. I guess there is in terms of the slantedness here, or the angle of these things in here. So maybe that does make a difference as to whether it comes out this side or whether it comes out the back. So I guess we'll try with both. I think I've been doing it with what looks to be, I guess what I would imagine is the top side, if you like, the one that's got the image of the snake on. So let's have a go at the back. The solidness of this puzzle is probably partly to do with it makes it impossible to force out, if that makes sense. So I can't just force that bit past this bit because of how solid the puzzle is, what it's made of, and how thick it is. There's obviously different lengths to some of these bits as well, so as we are looking at the star in this position here, this one and this one are shorter than this one and this one. And I feel like this one is the shortest out of all of them, which is probably very important to the actual solution for this one. So essentially with this one, there's going to be a position in which, because these are all of different lengths or varying lengths, there's going to be a position where there's only going to be one position where you have to have those certain things in the right position, and then you sort of twist out or fall out or whatever it is. At the minute I'm going for the trial and error process of trying every well, not every, but flipping it around and just seeing what happens. And the only thing I can think of as to how this one will actually separate is sort of a similar, well, a position like this, where we sort of got 3 things above it and one that's sort of just not, or just can't get over this ridge. So if we can find a position where that does happen, if you can sort of slide that up, then the other 2 parts you just twist and then separate. So at the minute I'm going for trying to find the position, or a possible position where that might be possible. And I think we should take a little bit more of a systematic approach to it now. So like I'm doing now, just trying each piece in that position, and I think that's all of them for there. So now we've tried all the variations with this one at the top. We'll now try it. Well, this is going to be tough to track, to be honest, but if we now try it with this one, I don't think I'm going to be able to track all the ones that I've done. So I think it's this one and this one. I think I've tried that one and I'm now trying this one. See, this is quite close here. And this edge almost seems a little bit more rounded. Possibly actually on this side, which is interesting. So, that is interesting actually. I think in here it's a little bit more, almost like it's been sanded down. Obviously you don't sand the metal, but yeah, that's interesting. So I have a feeling, hey, that I might be onto something here. So now we're going to try and use the sanded down side. This one's definitely more rounded than the others, and usually with Hanayama puzzles that is intentionally done. So now we're going to combine what we were doing before in sort of trying one of these edges at a time, but we can now, I'm now going to narrow it down. So we're going to try the smaller rounded out edge in this position the whole time, and we're going to try all these different other spiky bits of the star. And this way around, with sort of that bit coming up the slanted side, seems to make most sense to me right now. But I mean, if we don't get anywhere with this, then we'll look at alternatives for that as well. See, here is as close as we've got to separating it, but I think, there we go. Yeah, we've got it. So it's not that tight, but it just needs that movement there. Well, that took a lot longer than I thought it would have done, but I'm very happy that we figured it out rather than the trial and error sort of process that I expected. And I like how easy that is to separate as well. It's very nice. So we sort of figured out the slantedness would sort of be a factor, and then eventually we noticed that this piece here is certainly more rounded as we look down on that bit there in comparison to that bit there. It's more rounded, it's one of the shorter sides as well, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't even look like anything when you're sort of taking it apart like that. That is putting it back together, that is taking it apart, but when you're not in that position, it's pretty much impossible almost to, well, it is impossible, I think, I'm fairly sure it will be, to get it out from there. But yeah, I'm very happy with that one. And obviously we just have put it back together. We can take it apart there, we can put it back together in here. And as I said at the start, I'm pretty sure that the starting position itself doesn't really matter. I think we can look at that box and I wouldn't be able to distinguish between the different, oh, there we go, it's easy now, but we wouldn't be able to distinguish between those three sort of spiky parts anyway. So as long as it's, or once it's back in position, then yeah, then we're done. So we'll just put it back in now. And there we go. That's the star puzzle solved. Now we need to place it on our leaderboard. So there it is, we've managed to solve the star puzzle. Tougher than I expected, but again, like I just said, I was happy that we sort of figured out how it worked and how it was going to solve before we actually figured out or got the way of how it actually solves. So yeah, slightly tougher than expected, but fairly enjoyable and a relatively decent time to actually get it apart. Putting it back together, it was obviously just a reversal of that one move, and as I said as we were finishing it off, I don't think there is a specific original position as long as it's back together connected. So now all that's left to do is to place the star puzzle on the leaderboard. This is the easiest puzzle. This is the hardest puzzle. We're definitely going to be bottom 2 shelves for definite. The question is whether we're going to be bottom shelf or not. So if we start at the hashtag puzzle, we are harder than the hashtag puzzle. Next we've got the ABC, and we are probably harder than the ABC. We're also probably harder than the key 2 puzzle, which was a fairly recent one that we've done. Next is the hook, and here is where I'm not quite sure. I mean, if we jump above the hook, we get to the snow puzzle, which we solved 2 puzzles ago, I think, which almost definitely was more challenging than this one. Possibly unnecessarily if you look back at that video, but for me, definitely the star is easier than the snow. So the question is whether we go in front of the hook as harder or easier, so behind the hook. But I think we're going to place the star above the hook. I think the star is, for me anyway, a little bit more difficult than the hook puzzle. So there it is, that is where the star puzzle is going to live for now. And that actually marks the 60th Hanayama puzzle that we have done so far. 10 puzzles on each shelf at the minute, and there's plenty more to go. Thank you very much for being here. If you want to see me solve any of these other Hanayama puzzles and then the step-by-step solutions to each and every one of them, the star puzzle will be out in a couple of weeks. Then you should click my face here to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Peace!